When the Episcopal Church has a general convention, it tends to feel a bit like homecoming. And of course, General Convention is going on right now, if you haven't heard me already talk ad nauseum about it. It's happening in Austin, Texas, and just a few hours I'll be on a plane to go witness it myself, because I am a giant church nerd. But I do like the homecoming aspect of it all. And granted, not everyone can attend, but for leaders, it does seem like a family reunion. This triennial gathering not only feels like home, but it also, I think, seems to fly in the face of that pesky media line that the church is dying. Now, I refuse to accept that, and I look to our General Convention governing body with a lot of hope and idealism. But it is interesting. Convention to me is the same kind of family reunion that I suspect Jesus thought he would be getting when he returned home to Nazareth in today's reading. He does not get that. Mark's gospel tends to cram stories together, sometimes for no apparent reason, and others, kind of like last week's stories about the little girl rising from the dead, which was sandwiched around the woman in the crowd, and then stories like today as well, they all reveal their reasons a little quicker. In today's lesson, Jesus returns home to Nazareth in the first story, and then in the second story, Jesus commissions his disciples to go in pairs to local towns to spread the good news themselves. In the first sequence, Jesus makes, a triumphal entry into his hometown? The village's favorite son gone off to make a name for himself? No, quite the opposite. He teaches in the town synagogue, and all the people can say is, "Isn't that the son of Mary?" Now that is an insult, by the way. In first century Palestine, men were always referred to by their father's name. Jesus bar Joseph, bar like bar mitzvah, Jesus son of Joseph. This implies in a discreet way, by calling him the son of Mary, that there are rumors about Jesus of Nazareth. We don't know here whether Joseph is alive or has already gone to glory, but we can ascertain that people think of Jesus as an illegitimate child, a child born out of wedlock, and from the first century Palestine, that means a child of shame. And it's another keen example of how the Gospels can sometimes briefly and quickly illuminate some real-world ramifications for the inbreaking of God's incarnation in the world. For example, for us, she is the pure and holy Virgin Mary. For the Nazarenes in this story, she is pregnant by questionable means, and this reflects poorly on her son. Now also, the reference for Jesus as the son of the carpenter, besides not even distinguishing Joseph by name, is also a point of confusion. For centuries, we have adored the image of Jesus the carpenter, a job which we generally considered to be a skilled trade. It's a great image, Jesus building chairs and tables. If he was in New Lenox, he'd build decks and cabinets probably. But the Greek word here is tekton, which means one who is skilled with their hands. It's where we get the word technology. Now that could mean carpentry, but again, it's being used in the context of a slur. So it more likely means a day laborer, a brick or stone layer. And it's this further contrasting image. How can this man, this Jesus, get the nerve to come into this house of worship and act like he owns the place? Dramatic irony is that we know he definitely has the authority. But this is setting up a major theme for Mark that's already been hinted at in our previous weeks. The sprouting of God's kingdom on earth will be met with disinterest, confusion, misunderstanding, and, as in the case of this story, sometimes violence. It comes right before he passes on the power and privilege to the disciples to go spread the gospel. And in great detail in that sequence, Mark describes Jesus' instructions to them to go 2 by 2, to dress a certain way, how to enter a home, how to know when it's time to leave if the recipient's heart is just too hardened. And in those instances, Jesus says, quoting Taylor Swift, you just got to shake it off, and keep moving. There's a real urgency in Mark's gospel that the good news of Jesus must reach as many people as possible before our time is up. We cannot waste time. This has to happen now. And lurking in the background is a cost that must be tallied for these disciples. Recognize that they all likely had families, probably children, jobs, food to provide for their dinner tables. Indeed, if Mary is widowed, then Jesus, by being the eldest son, would have been expected to bring home the bacon and be the breadwinner. But where is Jesus? He's an itinerant preacher, hardly working to keep food on the table for the family. What's even harder to stomach is that this is expected of his disciples. That is what scholars like to call the cost of discipleship. They apply this term to Mark's gospel, which better than the other gospels illustrates the real stakes for a Christian, a follower of Jesus. The cost of discipleship is also the name of a book, a seminal work by a man named Dietrich Bonhoeffer before his untimely death at the hands of the Nazis in 1945. Bonhoeffer was a German minister who saw hate early on in the 1930s and tried to stop it. He worked for a decade to try to stop the spread of evil by decrying Hitler and the Nazi rule, but he would ultimately be executed for his efforts, including an involvement in a plot to kill Hitler. Prior to that, Bonhoeffer reflected and found solace, of course, in Jesus of Nazareth. Jesus, the son of Mary, the son of the Tecton, was a prophet without honor in his own hometown. Bonhoeffer understood that there is actually power in being the son of Mary and the son of a Tecton. Bonhoeffer, too, was a prophet without honor or freedom in his own homeland, if you consider Germany's transformation under Hitler. Both he and Jesus suffered for their cause, which was the spread of love, God's love, in the world. Bonhoeffer wrote in The Cost of Discipleship these words: "The messengers of Jesus will be hated to the end of time. They will be blamed for all the division which rends cities and homes. Jesus and his disciples will be condemned on all sides for undermining family life and for leading the nation astray. They will be called crazy fanatics and disturbers of the peace. The disciples will be sorely tempted to desert their Lord. But the end is also near, and they must hold on and persevere until it comes." The stakes for us these days are not usually life and death, gratefully. But these stories and the witness of Bonhoeffer's cost of discipleship remind us that it is increasingly difficult to be a real, true Christian in today's society. Our numbers are soft. Our scripture is being compromised to enforce tough policies. Our world leaders are posturing, and we are politically and emotionally as divided as ever. But all of these can be eased, we have to believe, by God's love and grace, as was always meant to be. The Episcopal Church's General Convention, that great family reunion, will be deciding important legislation, but the real quest that continues to elude us all is the task of growing the church. And hopefully, that is the ultimate work of that convention for a church like ours, for our little realm of Christendom. The task is to be like Jesus, to show love in the world even if the costs are great. And now more than ever, this world could use a few more disciples. Amen.